welcome to our Rev Up series. We completed our buyer section last week. This week, we're diving into the seller section. So we're talking about working with sellers. We're going to talk about the lead gen up until the pre-listing packet. And then next week, we'll cover the listing presentation. We'll talk about that a little bit more. Hold on. I'm going to look at something really quick. All right, sorry. Abby had asked me a question regarding the pre-listing questionnaire, so I wanted to make sure that I answered her before we got started. All right, so let's do this. Welcome to Rev Up, working with sellers. We are going to talk about the slideshow moving ahead when I click the buttons. This week, we're going to cover circles of opportunity, how to find qualified and motivated sellers. We're not going to talk about customizing your Realty One Group listing presentation, so we're just going to skip over that. We're going to talk about the 7 steps in the listing process, how to qualify sellers using the pre-listing questionnaire, effective research and preparation on the potential listing, the components of a pre-listing package, how to determine accurate price range, that comparative market analysis, and then scripts and dialogues for sellers. So let's dive in. Just so you know, we're not going to dive real deep into the CMA. We'll talk about it briefly, but I'm planning to bring that in as we do our tech training in this next summer series. I would like to pull in, I'll add it to my sticky here to make sure I don't forget, the CMA report. So we will, I just called it a CMA. I called it a CAT actually. I can spell cat. So CMA. So we'll cover that during our tech training. So stay tuned for that. We'll go over that whole CMA process on a regular area. We may talk about like non-conforming properties is what I'm going to call it. Every time I ask for an example of a listing to do a CMA on, I feel like Anastasia usually throws me one of hers and it's this random property in the middle of nowhere. But anyways, finding motivated sellers. Why do we need to secure listings? Buyers are so much fun. Buyers are fun. I actually really enjoy buyers, mainly because I like to look at houses. So it gets me into a lot of houses. That's usually why I like buyers. But your business, you should be focused on moving into what we call a listing-focused business. And the reason that we do that is because you have greater control over your time. With a listing, there are limited appointments that you actually have to be at that listing. With buyers, you're throwing them in a car or following them around, or they're following you around. We're seeing properties. It could be 3 properties. It could be 8 properties. It could be 27 properties. Think about all that time you're spending in your car showing properties. Not only that, but then you're there for the investigations. You've got to go do your Avid. They decide they want to go measure the garage. You're going back. So, you just have greater control over your time with listings. It just doesn't take as much time, which means that you have more time for lead generation and more time to build your business. You can handle more appointments with listings than you can being buyer focused. Most successful real estate businesses, as a solo agent, most of them you should aim for at least 50-50 listings to buyers, or even 60-40, with it like 60% listings, 40% buyers. It is also going to help you build a reputation in your marketplace. You've got signs in the yard. You can go door knock around your listings. People are seeing your face. They're making that correlation. So it's helping to build that reputation. You can handle considerably more volume with listings than with buyers. We just talked about this. They take less time. You've got more time to handle more transactions all at the same time. Also, most sellers become buyers, which means that you have additional transactions. Dun, dun, dun. So most of your listing transactions should result in 2 transactions. It should be a listing and a buyer transaction, or a listing and a referral. Okay. And then also we're going to leverage those leads, those listings for leads. So my goal is always like 3 leads per listing. Over the course of that listing, whether it's from a sign call, whether it's because I hosted an open house at that listing, whether I door knocked, whether it was a referral, whatever that is, my goal is to make that listing generate me 3 additional actual qualified leads. So that's why we try to be listing focused. Any questions about that before we move on? As
No.
always, I do have, oh, thank you. I do have the chat box open. You can unmute yourself. You can raise your little Zoom hand, whatever makes you happy to communicate with me. You're welcome to do so. I encourage communication. The next question is, Amy, where do we find those sellers that want to sell properties? Really, truly, we're going to find those sellers almost the same places that we would find those buyers. So whatever your lead gen methods are for buyers, they're probably going to be the same for your sellers. So as we start with the inner circle there, it's a little easier. The further out we get, the little harder it gets. As far as your skill set has to be a little bit more on par, but it could be from door knocking, could be life events, right? Like you could be looking for people that are looking to move up, move down, investors getting ready to sell, to go invest in another state. It could be from referrals, or it could be like specialized groups that you participate in. Last week for our lead gen series, we talked about doing seminars and such. So you could do seminars designed to cater to homeowners, and that's where you could find your listings. Some additional ways to find where you might find that sellers would be out of state owners, right? Where are people moving to from this area, or where are they looking to move to, right? To advertise in different areas. FSBOs, those are for sale by owners. You've got expired listings, you've got probate sales, right? So it comes to like making contacts with probate attorneys, making those relationships, letting them know you've got a system to help their people move through that process. Because remember too, a lot of times with probate, that probate attorney, a lot of times the large part of the estate is tied up in somebody's property or somebody's house. Oftentimes that's the biggest asset. So probate attorneys, they a lot of times probably don't get paid until that property gets sold. So, you know, they are wanting to get that property sold just like you are. So just some things to think about. You could post ads on Craigslist, social media, wherever that might be, your circle of influence, and you could always go to garage sales. Look at, you could like do double duty. You could go on every Saturday or Friday. You could go start hitting up garage sales. Not only will other people's trash become your treasures, but you can start asking them, oh, are they just doing spring cleaning? Are they getting ready for a move? Oh my gosh, look, now we just got a seller listing because they're like, yeah, we're thinking about moving out of the area. So we're trying to clear stuff out. Perfect. You have an agent already. I would love to interview for that position, right? So garage sales, great idea there. Any questions about finding motivated sellers and some of the ways that you can do that? All right, moving right along. Scripts and dialogues. The main goal of scripts and dialogues isn't so that you just regurgitate the same information at each and every person that you come in contact with, but it's so that more than nothing, you memorize and internalize those objection handlers. Okay, so when somebody says, I have a friend that's an agent, or somebody says, well, we were thinking about selling it ourselves, right? So that you know how to respond to those questions. So we want to make sure we memorize, we customize, we internalize, and we capitalize on those successful scripts or successful dialogues. I think something we're going to bring into this next season as well is going through and doing a little bit of script practice, or some ideas and approaches. If you're like, Amy, I don't even know where to start with that. If you log into your One Login and go to One University, if you will script a listing objection handlers, you will come up with 27 ways or 27 things that you can use or watch or download that will help you handle those objections. Okay. And then we want to make sure we practice them. So oftentimes the best way to internalize a script is to read through it over and over and over again. So those objection handlers, we just want to read through it over and over and over again until it just becomes second nature. Just like when we were back in school and we had to memorize things, you can put it on flashcards, whatever it is. Sometimes it helps to write it down. So oftentimes people are visual, auditory, and sensory. I don't know what that is when you write things down. I don't know what that's called. So sorry. But Most people have a primary way that they learn, and the others are kind of secondary. But if you do all three, it's going to help you commit that objection to memory a lot faster. So what I recommend is that we write it out and we say it out loud as we write it, because now we're writing it, so it's becoming part of our muscle memory. We're seeing it visually, and we're also hearing it as we say it. Okay, the other thing that you can do is you can record yourself saying those, and then you can listen to them like in the car when you're traveling between listings or whatever that is, or between showings. You can start listening to those objection handlers. So it just becomes second nature to you. All of a sudden you'll be standing at Home Depot and somebody you'll be like, oh, what are you working on? Oh, we've got a couple of repairs that we have to do before we can like get our house on the market. Oh my gosh, that's great. Do you have an agent? Well, our friend's an agent. And then all of a sudden you're going to rattle off with, oh, that's great. I would love to interview for the role, because sometimes just because they're a friend doesn't mean they're the best person for the job, right? Just because your friend's a heart surgeon doesn't mean that's who you'd go to. You'd run a research and utilize the best heart surgeon out there, right? And they'd be like, yeah, absolutely. I'd love to just come by and show you what I can do as your agent to help you get your house sold for the most amount of money with the least amount of stress. What time works well for you, right? And then all of a sudden you're like, oh my gosh, where did that come from? I have no idea. And you're like, oh my gosh, scripts, they work. So we want to memorize, customize, internalize, and capitalize. You can customize the scripts. You can make them I would recommend that you don't make significant changes, maybe a word here or there. But remember that most of these objection handlers or scripts are written by successful agents and used by successful agents. And you ultimately want to be a successful agent. So you utilize the scripts as written for the most part. Any questions about scripts or objection handlers before we move on? All right. We want to make sure, as with everything, that we spend time lead generating or prospecting. I highly recommend we talk about this during the prospecting class, or during the prospecting class, during the time blocking class, as well as I talk about this on a regular basis, that we want to block out time in our schedule for lead generation. And if you're going to ask me when the best time to lead generate is, I'm going to say it's in the morning. And you're going to be like, but Amy, I swear there are more people home in the afternoon. Yes, that may be true. And if we don't lead generate in the morning, by the time 2 o'clock comes around, did you have a question, Daniel? All right. By the time lead generation time comes around at 2 o'clock, now 20 other things have popped up in your life that are taking the time and you never get to it. So that's why we usually recommend time blocking that time in the morning for that lead generation. It could be calling people. It could be calling your database. It could be hosting open houses. Those might be in the afternoon. It's hard to bail on an open house once it's scheduled. It could be door knocking. It could be hosting seminars, right? So whatever that is, whatever kind of lead generation you're doing, make sure to put that time on your calendar each and every week. Hour one of, if we time block 3 hours for lead generation or prospecting, then hour one would be our preparation. Who are we going to call? What are we going to say? What's our approach? Okay. Hour two is when we're actually going to start prospecting, making those phone calls, knocking on those doors, doing whatever. Hour three is going to be follow-up. Who are we supposed to follow up with? Who do we need to add to our calendar for a day from now, 2 days from now? Who did we call yesterday that we're supposed to follow up with today, right? So that's kind of how they break it down. And I am a big fan of prospecting to a goal. So if I have prospecting on my calendar, I'm not just like, I'm calling for an hour. Okay. My goal is I'm calling until I set an appointment, or I'm calling until I get 10 people on the phone, because my goal every day is to have 10 conversations about real estate. So until I have those 10 people that have answered a phone and we've had a conversation, I'm not done. Or if I make calls and in the first 20 minutes, I talk with 10 people, or I set that one appointment, I'm done. I've got another 40 minutes of time that I can free up my day because I met my goal in that first 20 minutes. So I like it prospecting to a goal versus just prospecting to fill time. That's my opinion on it. You guys can do whatever you like. The follow-up too may be sending out cards to the people that you spoke to. I'm a big fan of that, right? If we had conversations with somebody, just send them a card in the mail saying, hey, thank you so much for taking my phone call. I enjoyed connecting with you, and I look forward to connecting with you in the future, right? Super easy, good time to send out those cards or make those connections. It may also be as part of the follow-up, everybody that you connected with on the phone, maybe we're looking for them on social media and we're adding them to our social media as a friend or a follower. Maybe we're liking or following their page. Maybe we're inviting them to like our business page. So some cool things there. And remember, I always prospect with the Ford sandwich method, which is family, occupation, recreation, dreams. I'm going to open up that phone call, trying to dig into that, especially if it's calls within my database. I want to build relationship with those people. So we're going to have a brief conversation about 1, 2, 3, or 4 of those areas. Again, that's family, occupation, recreation, dreams, Ford. Then I'm going to dig into the business portion, ask if they know anybody looking to buy, sell, or invest in real estate. I like to use memory joggers like, hey, who do you know, from work, your neighbors, your kids' sports teams, church. Who do you know that may be looking to buy, sell, or invest in real estate? By doing that memory jogger, when we ask that question or as we're leading up to that question, it causes them to actually start picturing people in their mind that they may know from work or school or their kids' sports teams, right? From those areas. And remember conversations that they had about people that were talking about buying or selling real estate. So it's a good way to just kind of make them think a little bit harder than if we just ask the question, because oftentimes we just ask the question, we get I can't think of anybody right now. Okay. And that's okay too. But the memory jogger will help you to walk away with more referrals. When we're going to follow up, we're going to wrap it up on the backside with the other piece of bread because it's a Ford sandwich. So we're going to wrap it up with that family, occupation, recreation, dreams. We're going to circle back to what we talked about at the beginning, at the end to follow up, tell them to have fun on their camping trip, tell them you hope their dog feels better, tell them you'll check back in on them in the next couple days, or hey, shoot me over a text to let me know how that vet appointment goes later if it's like an animal, right? Or let me know how your doctor's appointment goes, right? So follow up with them, be interested, build relationship. Any questions about prospecting or lead generation? Fabulous. In addition to that, we want to make sure that we track our progress. Dun, dun, dun. We want to know how many doors do we have to knock on? How many numbers do we have to call? How many database numbers do we have to talk to in order to get those 10 conversations or in order to book that one appointment? How many open houses do we have to host, right? So whatever that is, whatever your lead gen method is, we're going to track it. We're always going to have a goal and we're going to track it against that goal. Okay. So if my goal is to have 10 face-to-face conversations every day about real estate, then on Monday, my goal is 10. And how many did I actually have? Right? Tuesday, same thing. Wednesday, same thing. This is going to help us determine when we're not getting the results that we want. It's going to help us determine where the breakdown is. If my goal is 10 face-to-face conversations every day, and on Monday I had 1, on Tuesday I had none, on Wednesday I had 3, on Thursday I had 1, and my goal is 10 every day, and then I get to the end of the month and I'm like, man, I have no listings or buyers. What's going on? And I go back and look at what I was tracking for my lead gen, and I'm like, oh, I was supposed to talk to 10 people a day and I talk to maybe 10 people a week. Like that's probably where my breakdown is versus 10 conversations a day and I'm having 50 conversations a week. And by the end of the month, it's not leading to any appointments. Then it becomes what kind of conversations am I having and where do I need to tweak that in order to get those referrals or lead to an appointment, right? So we need to, that'll help us know whether we need to step up our activity or step up our skill set. Okay, by tracking. It also will let us look back over it over the course of 6 months or a year and say, is this worth the return on investment? How much time, energy, and effort am I spending on this? How much money am I spending on it? And what kind of results am I getting? And am I actually doing the things that I said I was going to do? So make sure to track your progress. All right, preparing to win the listing. So now we've done our lead generation. We've got somebody that raised their hand and said, I'm thinking about selling my property. It's a 7-step process. Step 1 is you want to complete the pre-listing questionnaire to qualify the potential seller, and you want to set that listing appointment. Step 2 is that we're going to research and prepare for the listing appointment. Step 3 is we're going to create and deliver that pre-listing package. I'm a number behind on my fingers. Step 4 is we're going to conduct that listing presentation. We're going to present our marketing and pricing strategies. We're going to sell them on the value that we're going to give them and why they would hire us. Step 5 is that we're going to ask for the listing. Okay. What you don't ask for, you don't get. So we're going to ask for the listing, complete the paperwork, and obtain those signatures. Step 6 is market and service the listing, right? We're going to communicate, negotiate, and close. And then step 7 is the after the sale follow-up system. Okay, so those are the 7 steps. We're going to get through about steps 1 through 3 today. We're going to cover step 4 tomorrow, 4 and 5. And then we'll talk about, or not tomorrow, next week. And then the week after that, we'll talk about 6 and 7, contract to close. Okay. Step 1 in the listing process is going to be using the pre-listing questionnaire as a guide to ask the sellers questions to determine readiness, willingness, and ability to sell, and how unrealistic their expectations are. Okay, at that time, we're either going to let them down gently or we're going to set that listing appointment. Okay, many homeowners are going to, during this process, they're going to push you for opinions on pricing right away, right? Because some believe the only differentiator between agents is the price that they recommend, and others are merely excited and eager to get started right away. So, right. So regardless, I don't make pricing recommendations before seeing the property or before having that actual listing appointment. Okay. And one of the ways to help you is to use an objection handler there. Like, although I know the market extremely well, I would be doing you a disservice to make a recommendation before I've seen your property and completed the research. Can you imagine a doctor giving you a diagnosis without checking your vitals and running tests? Wow, neither can I. So is today at 3 o'clock? I wouldn't do today at 3 o'clock because I want time to set out that pre-listing package. So I'd say, hey, is tomorrow at 3 o'clock better, or is Thursday at 5 o'clock best? Right? I'm never going to say too, when I go to set that listing appointment, oh, well, what time works for you? I'm completely open. Because now I've just said, hey, I'm not busy. I don't have anything going on. I'm really not that great of an agent, right? So we always want to give them some appointment time slots to choose from. So again, that objection handler would be, although I know the market extremely well, I would be doing you a disservice to make a recommendation before I've seen your property and completed the research. Okay, you could just stop there and leave it there. If you feel like you need to go a little further, you would go, can you imagine a doctor giving you a diagnosis without checking your vitals and running tests? Neither can I, right? So would tomorrow at 3 o'clock work better? You could say, or is mornings or afternoons better? Perfect. I have either tomorrow at 3 o'clock or I've got Thursday at 5:30. Which time works best for you? Right? All right. Qualifying sellers is not dissimilar to qualifying buyers. You're going to ask several questions to learn if the seller is truly ready, willing, and able to sell, and whether they're ready, willing, and able to sell now. Okay. Additionally, you want to kind of feel them out to see how realistic the seller is with regards to price and expectations. Okay, we're not just going to take any listing. That's the goal. Okay. We don't make a dime until that title changes hands. So we want to make sure that if we're going to spend time, energy, and effort, marketing, pre-marketing, spending time on this listing, that it's going to work out on a sold listing. That means you have to determine how realistic that the seller is about pricing and timing. You want to check the public record to ensure the transferability of the property. And you want to preview the home and surroundings for marketability and price. Okay. Up in this area, just so you know, we have a lot of scam sales going on right now on our vacant lots. So we always have to verify that the person we're talking to is actually the seller of the property by asking for copies of like pictures, IDs, and stuff like that if we're not going to meet them in person. So just some things to think about. I would highly recommend that we use the pre-listing questionnaire as a guide. There's actually 2 different ones that you can utilize. to ask the pertinent qualifying questions, things such as, why are you thinking of selling, right? What's their motivation? If you sell your home, where will you go? And if out of state, do you have a real estate professional there, right? So if they're like, oh man, I would move up to Redding or I would move to Idaho, perfect. It's not an area that I service. Do you have a real estate professional in that area? Right? Because we want to secure that referral as well. If your home does not sell, would you stay put or would you move anyways? Right? That helps us determine their motivation. Ideally, when would you like to be in your new home? Okay, if it's a job relocation, when do you start your new job? Will all the decision makers be present for our appointments? Right? We want to make sure we've got everybody that's going to be a decision maker that can sign on that line to sell the property present. And I always ask, do you have an idea of what you think you would like to sell your home for? Or what do you think your home is worth? Right? That gives us our idea of, is their price realistic or not? Okay. Many sellers are going to dodge the question there of what their home is worth or what they think they want to sell their house for, fearing that we're going to use that number against them somehow. However, just about every single homeowner has an idea of what they think their property's value is, right? So probe to get a feel while also reassuring the owners, right? So a good way to handle that would be, what do you think your property is worth? And they might say, oh, I don't know. Isn't that what we're hiring you to tell us? Right? Yes, absolutely. And I will definitely do the market research to figure out specifically where I would recommend pricing it. However, it's helpful to have a place to start. So what do you think it's worth? Or what were you hoping to sell it for? Right? Gosh, I really don't know, right? Is how they're going to respond. Well, how about the tax assessment, referring to public record? The tax roll shows that your property value is at $550,000. Do you agree with that? Now, I wouldn't really go with that route. That's the script that's in this, but because most other states, and it still might be a good place to start in California too, but in most other states, the property assessment changes with the value of the property on an annual basis. In California, your property taxes are based on the market value on the date that the property was purchased, right? For the most part, it's usually based on the purchase price, and then it adjusts a little bit each year, but it doesn't really stay in line with the market value. Although oftentimes the assessed value is there, but I would say oftentimes the assessed value kind of falls behind the actual market value, but it's still a good place to start ultimately if we want to throw a dart at it. Hey, the assessment says it's worth $525,000. Do you agree with that? Oh, no, it's worth much more, like are you thinking like 625, right? Throw some numbers out there, get them to start having a conversation with you about it. All right. If you hear answers to your questions such as, oh, there's no hurry to sell. If it sells, it sells. If not, we'll just stay put. Their motivation is low. They're looking to get specific money out of it or whatnot. So then it becomes can we hit that number or not? Does it make sense? We've spent X number of dollars on the roof or the pool, right? And we plan to add that amount to the price. We've heard realtors routinely underprice when they do market analysis. So whatever agents tell us, we're going to add X% to that, right? So just keep in mind those items and those things. Those might be red flags that you're going to have a difficult seller to work with. So just kind of take it as it comes. Maybe ask some additional clarifying questions, right? If somebody was like, oh, there's no hurry. If it sells, it sells. If it doesn't, we'll just stay put. Oh, well, we just talked about the reason that you were thinking about selling is that you'd really like to be closer to family. So if you were closer to family, what does that do for you, right? Or what does that look like, right? We want to start creating that desire. We want to grow that desire into something that motivates them to move forward. All right, here is one of the pre-listing questionnaires that you can utilize. This one I would say is the basic questionnaire. Name, address, city, state, phone number, secondary phone number, right? If what I share and discuss makes sense, will you feel comfortable and you feel comfortable and confident in my system? Will you consider working with me to get your home sold? Yes or no? Do you plan to interview more than one agent for the job of selling your home? Yes or no, right? Have you tried selling your house before? If yes, why do you think it didn't sell? And if no, what made you decide to sell this home? Well, either way, what did you, right? This would probably be my, before I set an appointment, these are the basic questions that I want answered in order to put their name on my calendar. Okay. If what I share makes sense and you're comfortable and confident in my system, will you consider working with me to get your home sold? Do you plan to interview more than one agent for the job of selling your home? Have you tried selling your house before? What made you decide to sell your home? Okay, now, in addition to that, there is this questionnaire, which is the pre-listing questionnaires to the seller. This might be something that you've decided to like create a Google form for that they can fill out. And you can say, hey, I've got a little questionnaire for you to help me gather some information regarding your property. It's about 20 questions. I'd like to send it to you electronically for you to fill out between now and our appointment. In fact, our appointment's set for Thursday at 3 o'clock. So do you think you could have this done by Wednesday at 3 o'clock or by Wednesday end of day? Oh yeah, absolutely. Perfect. I'm going to send it over to you right now. It's going to come over as a link. Would you like me to email it to you or text it to you? Right. And you could create this on Google Forms. Are you the sole listed owner on the property? Is it held in a trust? Right? How long have you lived in the property? Why are you looking to sell? Do you have an idea of what price you may want to sell the home for? Do you have solar? Have you done any improvements to your home since you have lived there? How old is the roof? Any leaks or issues? How old is the air conditioner? Is it properly working? What kind of flooring do you have throughout your home? Has the kitchen been remodeled? If so, when? What kind of cabinets are there? What color? Is there a pantry? Abby just threw this in the chat box as well, this one. Style or color of appliances. Are they stainless, white, black? Are they brand, age? What's the paint color in the house? When's the last time the walls have been painted? Have the bathrooms been remodeled? When? What color styles are the vanity? What type of countertop is on the vanity? What are the color fixtures? Are they gold, nickel, chrome, oil rubbed bronze, black, right? Are the fixtures updated to low flow? Okay, so those are the pre-listing questionnaires to sellers. That's to get an idea of what the property looks like so that you can comp it out appropriately. Okay, and again, I would probably want this like a day before or 2 days before. In fact, if I was talking to somebody today and I was going to send this to them electronically to fill out, I would probably ask the question of, if I send it to you right now, do you think you can have it done by, 8 o'clock tomorrow morning? That way I can complete my pre-listing packet tomorrow morning and drop it off at their property the day before my appointment. Okay, this is going to give me an idea when I go onto the MLS to look up their property and the last time it sold, what it looked like. Now I know what updates and improvements they've done to the property since they bought it. So I know that what's changed versus what looks the same. Okay, any questions about these two questionnaires? Right. Remember too, it's okay to say no. If they're like, my goodness, I think my property is worth 700,000, and you look at it and you go, it's probably closer to 600,000. We may not want to waste our time sitting down with them. You may want to clarify, like if I have an idea of what's selling in that neighborhood and they're like, man, my home's 700,000, you'd be like, oh, well, I noticed that the neighbor's home, which is similar in size to yours, sold closer to like 600,000. Can I ask you what makes you think that your home is worth more than their home was? Right? So we may want to gain some more, and it may be okay to say, I only work with motivated, qualified, and realistic sellers. It's okay to say no. It's okay to choose not to sit down with somebody, or to utilize this after the listing appointment and say, hey, after sitting down with you or after walking through your property and we've had the conversation about pricing, we've determined that I don't think what you're wanting to sell your property for is realistic. And unfortunately, I only work with motivated, qualified, and realistic sellers. So I don't think that we're a good fit. Right? Or it seems like you're kind of thinking about selling, but your motivation is just missing with regards to the sales process. And I only work with motivated, qualified, and realistic sellers. So once you've decided that you're ready to make the move, or once you've decided where you're going to move, then let's have another discussion, right? Another way to say no with grace is, Mr. and Mrs. Smith, I'm afraid that we're not the best match for doing business at this time. I know that we will not be able to meet your expectations, and I'd rather turn you down now than disappoint you later. Thank you so much for your consideration, and I wish you the very best. Right? I think more agents need to realize that it's okay to say no. Okay. Any questions about saying no? All right. The pre-listing package. I highly recommend that you drop off a pre-listing package with each and every listing appointment that you may have, whether it's friends, family, or strangers. In your pre-listing package, I like to include information about their home. Usually I print up like the tax records to make sure all the information is accurate. I'm going to include the comps, that CMA report, or the comparative market analysis report. Now, I may not put on that I'm going to drop off on their doorstep what the value range is I'm thinking about they should list their property for, because again, I haven't seen it. But I would like to include comps, and it may be comps that need a bunch of work, comps that are fully renovated, right, and everything in between, so that they can see what the other homes in that area that are similar to theirs are selling for, right? So they can review that ahead of time. Usually I like to do like the 1-page report for that CMA, or the cloud CMA report that just does like the side-by-side comparison, and then also has kind of like a 1-page per comp on there. Yes, Denise, sometimes they will find an agent that will list at their price, and sometimes they end up dropping it, and other times they don't. They just stand strong, and it just sits on the market for forever because they weren't that motivated in the first place. I agree. So that CMA report, you may want to include a copy of your resume. I like to include like a pre-listing package that may talk about the different types of marketing or options that they have available to them for photos or staging, right? So they can kind of see what I have to offer. I'm going to include copies of the sample contracts. Usually I include a copy of the residential listing agreement, a copy of the SPQ, and the TDS. Okay, just kind of those things that they're going to have to fill out and look at. And then a cover letter is always a good idea. In this cover letter, it says, encloses some information I have gathered about your home. I also have included information about myself and my company and the listing contracts for you to review if you choose. Please feel free to review any of the enclosed information ahead of time or to know any questions that you may have. I look forward to answering all of your questions and reviewing this information in detail during our appointment on Thursday at 3 p.m. By the way, there are a few things that you may want to have handy for our appointment. A spare key. We will need this for the lockbox. A recent mortgage statement. Homeowner's information, if applicable. A copy of your trust or LLC if the property is held in either, right? And I would probably adjust those depending on the property. Again, I look forward to meeting you on Thursday, and please don't hesitate to contact me with any questions. Sincerely, Amy Petard, real estate professional, Realty One Group, Fox, right? Phone number, address, email there, right? Super simple. Cover letter goes on there. And then I include the pre-listing packet that includes the resume. It includes my marketing plan. It includes options they may have available for staging and for photography, right? Basic overview of how we're going to get their house sold. Copy of those comps or that cloud CMA report, copy of the sample contracts at the end. Okay, so that's what I would put together. I'd like to put it in like a nice folder or a file system. You can get branded folders available to you. You can go to like, even on Canva now, just side note here, you can even order for sale signs on Canva. Magic. Okay, so there's so many options that you have available to you. I actually ordered like the corrugated stick in the ground for sale signs because I'm trying something new with a QR code that they can scan for the property information on the sign that captures their phone number. So I was thinking, well, what if I did different for sale signs for each and every listing so they're all individual? It cost me like $60 for 2 signs with the little posts that go in the ground. So we're trying something new. But it allows me to customize it for each property. So kind of fun there. I ordered them from Canva anyways. I was going to make the the print on Canva, and then I was gonna save it and then actually go over to a different website to actually have the signs made. And then I realized I can make them on Canva for basically the same price. I also had t-shirts made on Canva. Canva, you can do anything now. Magic. There you go. There's your side note. So I like to put them in folders so that it looks nice, or spiral bound it. You can put binding on it, put a nice like plastic cover over the top of it, put it on their porch or drop it off, mail it to them, whatever, depending on the time frame. If I'm going to drop it off on their porch, I also like to include like a little pop by, like a little gift. Maybe it's a flower with some cute saying on it, or something fun and exciting that allows you to kind of stand out from the competition. Any questions about that pre-listing package? All right. So that is the process of the pre-listing process, from lead generation to the time that we're going to show up at their door for the actual listing appointment. So set the appointment. Again, I kind of like to set my appointments probably 2 to 3 days in advance so that I have time to send them a questionnaire and have time to drop off that pre-listing package at least 24 hours before their appointment. Any questions, thoughts, or ahas before we wrap up for today?
Okay. So I listed my seller's house and I put a price, and she came back. She's like, no, I want to do this price. So we changed it. Up the street, another house is for sale. So I called the listing agent and I'm like, hey, how much are you selling you're listing your house for? He's like, $599. And I'm like, what the hell? So how do we know if who's right and who's wrong? His is a 4.2, mine's a 3.2 with a pool, and they both have leased solar.
Do they both have a pool?
No.
And what does your seller want to list her house for?
560.
What do the comps show?
Comps are right in that area. So I'm just like, is he going way too high for a 4.2?
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to say without actually pulling up comps on that property and looking at it. And if you feel like the comps are pointing to that 560 number, or like 560, 570-ish, then I would stick with what you know. I wouldn't worry so much about it, because now your house is going to look, even though it's a 3-bedroom, it's a 3-bedroom with a pool, and it's still going to be way more desirable than a 4-bedroom with no pool, especially at a lower price point. And obviously depending on the market, and the market's been picking up, so chances are that if you're priced a little on the low side, you're going to end up with multiple offers on it. But again, if it's a slower market, then you can't bank on that factor. So you just want to make sure that you're priced in line with the comparables. And it's always okay to reach out to another agent in the office and ask them what they think the house would be worth, so that you make sure you're pricing it appropriately. It's always a good idea to bounce it off somebody else to make sure that kind of what you're thinking and where they would pinpoint it are very similar.
Okay, because he was like, well, you're going to hurt my comps. And I'm just like, you're going to hurt yourself by pricing it too high.
You're like, there are no comps to support that price, so I'm not hurting anything.
Right. Okay. I feel better now. Thank you.
Yeah. And if you have a conversation with an agent like that, that's like, man, yeah, I was going to list it at $599. You can be like, man, I've got one that's getting ready to go on the market. And I just, ours has a pool, and I just didn't see the comps that supported that. What comps are you looking at that get you that value? Because I would love to be able to price this one in a way that's going to support your listing as well. And I'm just not seeing the comps, right? So just have a conversation with them. Absolutely.
Thank you.
Yep. Make sure you log your attendance, and it's in the chat box. There was also a link to that seller questionnaire in the chat box as well. And on that attendance form, when you log that, there's always a place where you can make suggestions of what you'd like to see in the future for trainings. And I always look at that when I put together our new trainings. So please make recommendations. It helps to make the trainings better for you and for the office. So I appreciate everyone joining me today. Anybody have any questions before we finish up?
Amy, I have one question before we get off here. I do have a listing appointment set for Monday evening, and as I was pulling comps, I kind of want to know your opinion of what comps we should pull without physically seeing the property prior
Yeah.
to the appointment. Like what I could bring that can just, what do you think? Is it 3? Is it 5? Is it, you see what I'm saying?
Yep, I want a minimum of 3 sold comps, and I'm usually also looking for, when we're looking at listings, I'm looking at the contingent or pending comps as well as active comps. So it'd be nice to have a couple active, a couple pending, and at least 3 closed sales. If there's more than that, as far as closed sales in that neighborhood, then I'm going to pull all the closed sales that make sense to me, as far as like, we're already looking at the neighborhood, so we know the proximity makes sense. But if the property we're getting ready to list is 1,700 square feet and one of the listings is 1,200 square feet, I may pull only the ones that are closer in square footage. But I'm going to pull any of those sold listings, so I have a minimum of 3 that make it make sense for that property to be a comp. And I usually like to include comps that are maybe kind of more like fixers or not updated, and some comps that are more updated. Just because I think that gives a good variety. And sometimes when we talk to people about their homes and they're like, oh yeah, it was completely updated, and then you show up there and it was updated in 1982, then I'm like, oh man, I'm glad I pulled that comp that needed a bunch of work, because this house is more like that than what they sold it to me as, right? What they said it was going to be. So I like to kind of pull a broad range of comps. And again, in the pre-listing package, I probably wouldn't determine a price as far as like put it in writing. But when I sit down with them for the listing appointment, I want to make sure I have a price range in mind for if the property is exactly like they said, it's got great updates, it's amazing, or if it needed work, like kind of whichever realm they go, kind of my idea of where I would recommend pricing it. And I want comps that reflect that huge range of properties. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it's so limited. What I'm seeing is only 3 sold that are kind of comps, but there's obviously always variables. There's nothing really true comp. And then that's pulling 6 months back. And it's just kind of like it's just all over the page,
Yeah.
Hard. It's so hard to pull comps, but what I'm seeing, at least in the sold, is that they're selling quickly.
Good. Good.
So there's no
Yeah.
active in that area at all.
Good.
Of like
Good.
anything even near active is like older, and in a different style of home altogether.
Yeah, and sometimes if I'm up against that, like I'm just not finding the comps that I want or comps that I feel like are a good match. Sometimes I'll go to other neighborhoods or other areas to pull comps as well that I know are similar to that one, as far as the composition of the neighborhood or the approximate price range of that neighborhood. So I will go and pull additional comps from other places if I need them to help figure out what a sales price should be.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
But that's too where, right, when it comes to listing a home, the appraiser is going to judge it against sold properties, but whatever's pending is going to be sold by the time we're ready to close or have an appraisal done. So that's where kind of some of those contingent and pending properties come into play as well. And sometimes doing some legwork, calling the agent and just asking if they would be willing to disclose to you what the potential sales price would be or what they're in contract at. So you have an idea of, oh, it was listed at 560, but they're in contract at 575. So when I go sit down with the sellers, I kind of know where properties are going to land.
Right. There was a sold home that sold off of the off market, but I know the buyer's agent. Would it be wise to reach out to them to see why and what because I can't see pictures of the inside of the house or anything, like, and know exactly what updates or if they had a pool like my property does, or why they got that price. Because that price is in the price range that would justify what my sellers want, but I can't justify it because I don't know the ins and outs of that.
Absolutely. I would call that agent up and just be like, hey, I saw, your buyers did an off-market purchase of this property. I'm just curious what the details were on that. And You know, if you wouldn't mind, can I ask like kind of what the condition of the house was and stuff? Absolutely.
Okay.
Yep. Yep.
Thank you.
You're welcome. All right. Thank you everyone for joining me today. I appreciate it. Denise, what's your question? I'm going to say no. I can't hear anything else. Whatever you're hearing. Anyways, sorry about that. Anyways, thank you so much. Tomorrow we have Placer Title coming to the office. So it'll be on Zoom and in the office. And they are talking about setting your signings up for success, like how to handle out of area, out of state, out of country signers, what that process looks like, timeline, as well as talking about title insurance. And some of the hurdles that you might encounter with title insurance, with a property being insurable, even so just some issues there. So it'll be a fabulous class. And we look forward to seeing you tomorrow. And then tomorrow evening, we have the lead gen series will be continuing. And it will be covering business to business referrals is what we're talking about tomorrow for our lead gen series at 7 p.m. So we'll see you all tomorrow.
Bye, Amy. Thank you.
Thank you.